The rain started just as I pulled into the gas station on 5th Street, the kind of steady drizzle that makes everything look like it's been dunked in gray paint. My 2012 Honda Civic wheezed as I turned off the engine, the dashboard light flickering one last time before dying completely. I'd been driving for Uber for 3 years now, ever since the plant closed down and took my pension with it. At 54, starting over wasn't exactly what I'd planned, but life has a way of laughing at your plans. I was filling up the tank when I heard it, this obnoxious honking behind me. I turned around to see this sleek black BMW 7 Series, all chrome and arrogance, idling behind my beaten-up Honda. The driver rolled down his window, and I could see him clearly under the harsh fluorescent lights. Mid-30s, perfectly styled hair that probably cost more than my car payment, wearing what looked like a $1,000 suit, even at 9:30 on a Tuesday night. "Hey, Gramps," he shouted over the rain. "You planning on moving that piece of junk anytime soon? Some of us have places to be." I felt the familiar burn in my chest, the same feeling I got every time someone looked at me like I was invisible, like I didn't matter. But I kept my mouth shut and finished filling the tank. My hands were shaking a little. Whether from anger or the cold rain soaking through my jacket, I couldn't tell. The BMW driver revved his engine impatiently. When I still didn't move fast enough for his liking, he laid on the horn again, long, aggressive blasts that echoed off the gas station canopy. "Come on, old man, I don't have all night." Other people at the gas station were starting to stare. A young woman at pump 3 looked embarrassed for me. A trucker at pump 5 shook his head in disgust. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the pavement along with the rainwater swirling around the storm drains. I climbed back into my car, my wet clothes sticking to the worn fabric seats. The engine turned over on the 3rd try, coughing like an old smoker. As I pulled away from the pump, the BMW driver pulled up alongside me at the traffic light. He rolled down his passenger window and leaned over. "Nice ride, Grandpa," he called out, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "What is that, a rental from 1995? He laughed, this sharp, cruel sound that cut through the rain. "Maybe it's time to hang up the keys and let the real drivers handle the roads." The light turned green, and he peeled out, his BMW purring like a satisfied cat as it disappeared into the night traffic. I sat there for a moment longer than I should have, watching his taillights fade, feeling smaller and more invisible than I had in months. The radio crackled to life with a weather report. Severe thunderstorm warning in effect until midnight. Heavy rain, strong winds, and possible flooding in low-lying areas. Perfect. Just what I needed to cap off a perfect evening of humiliation. My phone buzzed with a ride request. I almost ignored it. I was tired, soaked, and my pride was bruised worse than my bank account. But rent was due in 3 days, and I needed every fare I could get. The pickup location was downtown, at one of those expensive high-rise condos where people like BMW driver lived. The destination was the airport, a good fare, 45 minutes at least, maybe 50 with this weather. I accepted the ride and pulled back into traffic. The rain was getting heavier now, turning the city streets into rivers of reflected neon. My windshield wiper squeaked with each pass, a rhythmic reminder of how old everything in my life had become. The Honda's heater worked sporadically, blowing lukewarm air that fogged up the windows faster than I could clear them. 20 minutes later, I pulled up to the address, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that probably cost more per month than I made in a year. The lobby was all marble and gold, with doormen in uniforms that looked better than my Sunday clothes. I texted the passenger that I'd arrived and settled in to wait. That's when I saw him. Through the rain-streaked windshield, I watched a familiar figure emerge from the building's entrance. The same perfectly styled hair, the same expensive suit, though now rumpled and wet from the short sprint to the curb. It was BMW driver, and he was heading straight for my car. My heart started pounding. This couldn't be happening. Of all the Uber drivers in this city, of all the rides he could have requested, he'd gotten me. The old man with the piece of junk car he'd laughed at less than an hour ago. He opened the passenger door and slid into the front seat, shaking raindrops off his suit jacket. For a moment, he didn't look up from his phone. When he finally did, our eyes met in the rearview mirror, and I watched recognition dawn on his face like sunrise over a cemetery. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered under his breath. I found my voice, though it came out rougher than I intended. "Good evening. I'm Marcus, your Uber driver. You're heading to the airport, correct?" He stared at me for a long moment, his mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from water. I could see the calculations running behind his eyes. Cancel the ride and wait for another driver in this storm? Or swallow his pride and let the old man he'd humiliated drive him where he needed to go? "Yeah," he said, finally, settling back into the seat. "Terminal B, Delta departures." I put the car in drive and pulled away from the curb. The silence in the car was thick enough to cut with a knife. He kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, probably wondering if I'd recognized him too. The rain hammered against the roof of the Honda, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the city like God clearing his throat. "Weather's getting pretty rough out there," I said, more to break the silence than anything else. "Good thing you're not driving in this." He didn't respond, just continued staring out the window at the flooded streets. But I caught something in his reflection, a flicker of discomfort, maybe even embarrassment. Good, let him squirm a little. My phone, mounted on the dashboard, buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it quickly at a red light, expecting maybe a message from another passenger or my daughter checking in. Instead, I saw something that made my blood run cold. "Don't react. The man in the back is watching you." The message was from an unknown number. My hands tightened on the steering wheel, and I forced myself not to look back at my passenger. The rain continued to fall, but suddenly the sound seemed muted, like the whole world was holding its breath. I was still processing what I'd just read when my passenger spoke for the first time since giving me the destination. "So," he said, his voice careful and measured, "how long have you been driving for Uber?" The question seemed innocent enough, but there was something underneath it, something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw him watching me intently, his earlier discomfort replaced by something I couldn't quite identify. "About 3 years," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "It's honest work." He laughed, but it wasn't the cruel laugh from the gas station. This one was different, nervous, maybe even a little forced. "Honest work," he repeated. "Yeah, I bet it is. You meet all kinds of people in this job, don't you? All kinds of interesting situations." Another text message popped up on my phone. Same unknown number. "He's not who you think he is." My mouth went dry. The traffic light ahead turned red, and I eased the Honda to a stop, trying to think. Who was sending these messages? How did they know I was in the car with this guy? And what did they mean he wasn't who I thought he was? Through the rain-soaked windshield, I watched other cars navigate the flooded intersection. Normal people going about their normal lives, unaware that something strange and potentially dangerous was playing out in the beat-up Honda Civic in the left turn lane. "Everything okay up there?" my passenger asked, and when I looked in the mirror, he was leaning forward slightly, studying my face. "Just watching the road," I said. "Safety first, you know." But inside, my mind was racing. Who was this man, really? And why was someone warning me about him? The storm was just getting started. The light turned green, and I guided the Honda through the intersection, windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the intensifying rain. My passenger had gone quiet again, but I could feel his presence behind me, like a weight pressing down on my shoulders. Every few seconds I'd catch him in the rearview mirror, and each time he'd quickly look away. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Check his LinkedIn. Search Marcus Chen fraud investigation. Marcus Chen. That was the name on the ride request. But wait, that was my name too. Marcus. Not Chen, though. Marcus Williams. But the passenger had never told me his first name, and the app only showed riders' first names to drivers. Something cold crawled up my spine. How did the person texting me know my name? And why were they telling me to search for fraud investigations? We were stopped at another red light, this one longer than the last. I pretended to adjust my phone mount while actually opening a web browser. My hands were shaking slightly as I typed Marcus Chen fraud investigation into the search bar. The results made my stomach drop. Headlines from the past 6 months filled the screen. Tech executive charged with embezzlement. Marcus Chen accused of stealing $2.3 million. Former startup CEO awaits trial for wire fraud. And there, in the thumbnail photo of one of the articles, was my passenger. Same face, same arrogant expression, though this photo was taken outside a courthouse instead of inside a BMW. "Light screen," he said softly from behind me. I quickly closed the browser and accelerated through the intersection, my mind reeling. Marcus Chen, fraud charges, $2.3 million. And now he was sitting in my car, heading to the airport in the middle of a thunderstorm. Another text. He's running. Flight leaves at 11:47 p.m. Non-extradition country. I glanced at the clock on my dashboard. 10:23 p.m. We were still 20 minutes from the airport in good weather, maybe 30 in this storm. Plenty of time for him to make his flight and disappear forever. "You know," I said, trying to keep my voice conversational, "I don't think I caught your name." There was a pause before he answered. "It's Marcus." "Marcus," I repeated. "Funny coincidence. That's my name too." "Small world," he said, but his voice had taken on a hard edge. We were heading down the highway now, the airport signs growing larger overhead. The rain was coming down in sheets, and I had to slow down as other drivers pulled over to wait out the worst of the storm. The Honda's engine was working harder than usual, and I could hear a new rattle somewhere under the hood. My phone buzzed again. "FBI is 30 minutes behind. Keep him in the car." My heart started pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it over the rain. The FBI? They wanted me to keep a fugitive in my car? I was just an Uber driver. I drove people places and tried to make enough money to pay rent. I wasn't equipped for this. "Everything okay up there?" Marcus asked again. "You seem a little tense." I met his eyes in the rearview mirror. He was studying me with the intensity of a predator watching prey, and I realized he'd been doing it the whole ride. He'd known something was wrong before I did. "Just the weather," I said. "Makes me nervous driving in storms like this." "Yeah," he said slowly. "Storms can be unpredictable. You never know when something might go wrong." The way he said it made my skin crawl. Was that a threat? I checked the speedometer. We were doing 45 in a 60 zone, crawling along with the storm traffic. At this rate, it would take us 40 minutes to reach the airport, maybe longer. Another message. "His phone is encrypted, but we tracked his calls. He knows you know." My blood turned to ice water. He knows I know. Which meant this wasn't just about me being an unwitting accomplice to his escape. This had become something else entirely. I glanced in the mirror again and saw him holding his phone, thumb moving across the screen, texting someone. His face was calm, almost serene, but there was something predatory in the way he held himself. "So, Marcus," I said, because the silence was becoming unbearable, "what line of work are you in?"
He looked up from his phone with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm in acquisitions. I help companies acquire assets they need." "Must be interesting work." "Oh, it is. Very interesting. Sometimes you have to be creative about how you acquire things."
Sometimes the owners don't want to sell, so you have to find other ways to motivate them. The highway curved ahead, and through the rain, I could see the airport's control tower blinking in the distance. We were maybe 15 minutes away now. My phone showed 3 more messages from the unknown number, but I couldn't risk reading them while he was watching. "Pull over," Marcus said suddenly. I nearly jumped out of my skin. "What?" I said, "Pull over, now." His voice had completely changed. The nervous politeness was gone, replaced by something cold and commanding. In the mirror, I saw him lean forward, and my stomach clenched when I caught a glimpse of something metallic in his hand. "There's an exit coming up," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I can pull off there if you need to." "Now," he repeated, and this time there was no mistaking the threat in his voice. I signaled right and pulled onto the shoulder of the highway. The rain was hammering the car so hard now that I could barely see the traffic passing us. My hands were shaking as I put the car in park. "Turn around," Marcus said. Slowly, I turned to face him. He was holding a small silver pistol pointed directly at my chest. His face was completely calm, like pointing a gun at people was just another Tuesday night activity. "You're going to do exactly what I tell you," he said quietly. "And if you're very good, you might live through this." The rain drummed against the roof of the Honda, and somewhere in the distance, lightning split the sky. I thought about my daughter Sarah, about the grandchildren I might never meet, about all the things I'd never get to do. But mostly, I thought about how tired I was of people like Marcus Chen treating people like me as if we didn't matter. "Okay," I said, meeting his eyes. "What do you want me to do?" He smiled then, and it was the same cruel smile he'd given me at the gas station. "Drive," he said, "but not to the airport. I'm going to give you a new address, and you're going to take me there. And Marcus, if you try anything clever, if you try to signal anyone or make any stops, I'll put a bullet in your head and drive myself." He rattled off an address I didn't recognize, somewhere in the industrial district near the river, the kind of place where people went to disappear things, or people, permanently. I put the car back in drive and pulled into traffic, my mind racing. The FBI was 30 minutes behind, according to the mysterious texter. But 30 minutes might as well be 30 hours if Marcus Chen was planning to kill me in some warehouse by the river. My phone buzzed with another message, but I didn't dare look at it. Marcus was watching my every move, the gun resting casually in his lap like it belonged there. "You know," I said as we took the exit toward his new destination, "I remember you from earlier tonight." His laugh was sharp and humorless. "Do you now? At the gas station, you were the one with the BMW making fun of my car." "Ancient history," he said dismissively. "You called me Gramps, said maybe it was time for me to hang up my keys." "And maybe it is," he replied, and I heard the sound of metal clicking as he did something with the gun. But I was smiling now, despite everything, because while Marcus Chen had been busy feeling superior to an old man in a beat-up Honda, he'd made a crucial mistake. He'd assumed I was just another victim. The industrial district was a maze of abandoned warehouses and empty lots, the kind of place that looked apocalyptic even in good weather. In the middle of a thunderstorm, with most of the streetlights broken and shadows pooling in every doorway, it felt like the end of the world. "Turn left here," Marcus instructed, the gun still resting in his lap. We were driving down a narrow street lined with chain-link fences and loading docks. Most of the buildings looked empty, their windows either boarded up or shattered. I followed his directions, taking a series of turns that led us deeper into the industrial maze.
My phone had buzzed several more times, but I hadn't been able to check the messages. Whatever my mysterious contact was trying to tell me would have to wait. "Stop here," Marcus said, as we approached a large warehouse with a corrugated metal roof. There were no other cars in sight, no signs of life anywhere.
Just us, the rain, and whatever Marcus had planned for this place. I put the Honda in park but kept the engine running. Through the rain-soaked windshield, I could see a single light burning in a window on the second floor of the warehouse. Someone was waiting for us. "Turn off the engine," Marcus ordered. "The battery's been acting up," I said. "If I turn it off, it might not start again." I said turn it off. I reluctantly complied, and the Honda shuddered to a stop. The sudden silence was deafening. No engine noise, no radio, just the sound of rain hammering the metal roof of the warehouse and the distant rumble of thunder. Marcus leaned forward, the gun now pointing directly at the back of my head. "Here's how this is going to work," he said quietly. "We're going to get out of the car, and you're going to walk exactly where I tell you to walk. No sudden movements, no trying to run. Understand?" I nodded, my mouth too dry to speak. "Good. And Marcus, I want you to know that this isn't personal. You just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time." "Story of my life," I managed to say. We got out of the car into the driving rain. Within seconds, my clothes were soaked through again, and my glasses were so covered with water I could barely see. Marcus grabbed my arm roughly and steered me toward a side door of the warehouse. The door was unlocked. Inside, the warehouse was dimly lit by a few overhead fixtures, most of which were flickering or burned out entirely. The air smelled of rust, mildew, and something else I couldn't identify, something organic and unpleasant. "This way," Marcus said, pushing me forward. We walked across the concrete floor, our footsteps echoing in the vast space. I could see stairs leading up to the second floor, where that single light was burning. Whatever was waiting for us up there, I had a feeling it wasn't going to be pleasant. "Up the stairs," Marcus ordered, slowly. Each step felt like it might be my last. The metal stairs clanged under our feet, and the handrail was slick with moisture from the leaking roof. About halfway up, Marcus's phone rang. "Yeah," he answered, without slowing down. "We're here." "No, just me and the driver." I know. 5 minutes." He hung up and poked me with the gun. "Move faster." We reached the second floor, which was divided into what looked like old offices. The light was coming from a room at the far end of the hallway. As we got closer, I could hear voices, at least 2 people, maybe more. "In here," Marcus said, pushing open the door to the lit room. Inside, I found 3 people waiting for us. 2 men in expensive suits who looked like they'd stepped out of the same catalog as Marcus, and a woman with silver hair and cold eyes who was clearly in charge. They all looked up when we entered, and I didn't like what I saw in their faces. "So this is our problem," the woman said, looking me up and down like I was a piece of furniture she was considering buying. "He knows too much," Marcus replied. "Got some kind of tip about me. FBI's probably not far behind." "Then we need to move quickly," one of the other men said. He had a slight accent I couldn't place and a scar running down the left side of his face. "The plane leaves in 30 minutes. "What about him?" the woman asked, nodding toward me. "He's a loose end," Marcus said simply. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. This wasn't just about Marcus running from fraud charges. These people were talking about me like I was already dead. "Please," I said, finding my voice at last. "I don't know anything. I'm just an Uber driver. I won't say anything to anyone." The woman smiled, and it was worse than Marcus's cruel laugh at the gas station. "Oh, I'm sure you wouldn't mean to. But you've seen our faces. You know where we are.
That's simply too much information for someone in your position to possess. Look, I said desperately, I don't even know what this is about. Marcus here, he's just another passenger. I picked him up. I was taking him to the airport. That's all. That's touching, the woman said, but I'm afraid. She was interrupted by the sound of my phone buzzing. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Marcus grabbed it from my pocket before I could react. "Unknown number," he said, scrolling through the messages. His face went pale as he read. Someone's been feeding him information this whole time. The woman snatched the phone from Marcus and read the messages herself. Her expression darkened with each one. "FBI is 30 minutes behind," she read aloud. "Keep him in the car. He knows you know." She looked up at me with newfound interest. "You've been busy tonight, haven't you?" "I don't know who's been sending those," I said truthfully. "They started coming right after I picked him up." The scarred man walked over to the window and peered out through the rain. "No signs of law enforcement yet, but if someone's been tracking us." "We need to leave, now," the woman said. "All of us." "What about him?" Marcus asked, waving the gun in my direction. The woman considered this for a moment, her cold eyes never leaving my face. "He comes with us, at least until we're safely airborne. Then," she shrugged, and I understood exactly what that shrug meant. They were going to kill me on the plane. But as they started discussing the logistics of getting to their private aircraft, I allowed myself a small smile. Because while they'd been focused on the mysterious text messages and FBI warnings, they'd missed something important. They'd missed the fact that my phone had one more feature they hadn't considered. And they'd missed the small device I'd palmed from under my dashboard while Marcus was distracted with his gun. Most importantly, they'd missed the fact that sometimes the old man in the beat-up Honda isn't just a victim. Sometimes he's the one with the plan. "Move," the scarred man said, gesturing toward the door with his own weapon, a larger pistol than Marcus, all black metal and business. "Cars out back." They marched me down the stairs and through the warehouse, the woman leading, while Marcus and the scarred man flanked me. The third man had disappeared somewhere, probably to handle some aspect of their escape plan. These people were professionals, I realized. This wasn't Marcus's first time running from the law, and it wouldn't be his last if they succeeded tonight. We emerged from the back of the warehouse into an alley where a black SUV waited, engine running. The rain was still coming down hard, but I could see another vehicle parked across the alley, a sedan with tinted windows and government plates. "FBI," the woman hissed, spotting it at the same time I did. "How did they find us so fast?" Marcus demanded. The woman looked at me suspiciously. "Good question. What aren't you telling us?" "Nothing," I said, which was technically true. I wasn't telling them that the small device I'd palmed from my dashboard was a GPS tracker my daughter had insisted I install after a close call with a drunk passenger last year. I also wasn't telling them that I'd activated it when Marcus first pulled the gun on me. But most importantly, I wasn't telling them that the unknown number that had been texting me all night wasn't as unknown as they thought. "Get in the car," the scarred man ordered, opening the SUV's rear door. "Now." As I climbed into the back seat, my phone, still in the woman's possession, buzzed again. She looked at the screen and her face went white. "What is it?" Marcus asked as he climbed in beside me. "We have the warehouse surrounded," she read. "Release the civilian and surrender peacefully." Through the rain-streaked windows, I could see flashlight beams moving between the buildings around us. The FBI hadn't just found us, they'd anticipated our escape route. "How?" Marcus demanded, his voice rising with panic. "How could they possibly—" "Because I told them exactly where you'd be," I said quietly. All three of them turned to stare at me. The woman raised her pistol, pointing it directly at my face. "What did you say?"
I met her cold eyes steadily. I said, I told them where you'd be, every step of the way. Marcus grabbed me by the shirt. That's impossible. You didn't know where we were going until I told you. That's true, I agreed. But you made a mistake back at the gas station, Marcus. When you were so busy laughing at my old car and calling me Gramps, you didn't notice something important. What? He snarled. You didn't notice the dash cam. The woman's eyes widened. You recorded him? Oh, I recorded more than that.
See, when someone humiliates me the way Marcus did tonight, I tend to remember their license plate. And when that same person ends up in my car an hour later, I tend to get curious. So while we were sitting at traffic lights, I did a little research. The fraud charges, Marcus breathed. The fraud charges, the warrant, the FBI investigation, all of it. And when those text messages started coming in, I knew exactly who was sending them. The woman was studying my face intently. Who? I smiled, feeling more confident than I had all night. My daughter Sarah. She's a federal prosecutor, specializes in white-collar crime. When I texted her Marcus's license plate and told her he was acting suspicious, she ran it through the system. Turns out the FBI has been looking for Marcus Chen for 6 months. Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. You set us up. You set yourself up, I corrected. All I did was recognize an opportunity when I saw one. You see, you were right about one thing back at the gas station. I am getting old. But you were wrong about something else. You thought that made me weak. The scarred man was peering out the windows nervously. We need to move, now! FBI's closing in. We're not going anywhere, the woman said grimly. The building's surrounded, and thanks to our talkative driver here, they know exactly who we are and what we're planning. So what do we do? Marcus asked, his voice cracking. The woman considered our options for a moment, then made a decision that chilled my blood. We fight our way out. Use him as a human shield. She gestured at me with her gun, and I felt my confidence evaporate. I might have outsmarted them, but I was still trapped in a car with 3 armed criminals who now had nothing left to lose. Wait, I said quickly. There's something else you should know. What now? The scarred man demanded. The dash cam isn't just recording video. It's live streaming. Everything that's happened tonight. The gas station, the ride, the warehouse, this conversation right now, it's all being broadcast live to the FBI command center. The woman's face went ashen. You're lying. Am I? Check your phones. I bet you're getting calls right about now. As if on cue, all 3 of their phones started ringing simultaneously. They looked at each other, then at me, and I saw something I'd never expected to see in their faces. Fear. Not fear of being caught. They'd already been caught. Fear of being exposed. Fear of having their crimes broadcast live to law enforcement agencies across the country. Fear of becoming the subject of a federal case study in how not to commit crimes in the digital age. You clever old bastard, the woman said, almost admiringly. Like I said, I replied, you shouldn't have laughed at the old car. It might be beat up, but it's got some features you weren't expecting.
Outside, a loudspeaker crackled to life. The building is surrounded. Release the civilian and exit the vehicle with your hands visible. Marcus stared at me in shock. Williams, your daughter is... The federal prosecutor who's been building the case against you for the past 6 months, I finished. Small world, isn't it? The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus had spent the evening assuming he was smarter than everyone around him, assuming that an old man in a beat-up Honda couldn't possibly pose a threat. But he'd never considered that the old man might have connections of his own, might have people who cared about him enough to help when he was in trouble. He'd never considered that family could be the strongest weapon of all. The next 10 minutes felt like hours. The three criminals sat in stunned silence, their phones ringing continuously as FBI agents, federal prosecutors, and probably half the law enforcement community called to congratulate them on their starring role in the most comprehensively documented federal crime spree in recent memory. Through the SUV's windows, I could see FBI agents taking positions around the warehouse, their red laser sights painting the building's walls like Christmas decorations. Sarah's voice continued coming through the loudspeaker, professional and calm, outlining exactly what would happen if they didn't surrender peacefully.
"This is insane," Marcus muttered, running his hands through his perfectly styled hair. "How did we go from a simple airport run to this?" "You got greedy," I said, "and you got mean. That's a dangerous combination." The woman, who I'd learned from Sarah's announcements was named Victoria Reeves, wanted for embezzlement in 3 states, was staring at her phone screen with a mixture of fascination and horror. "They have everything," she said quietly. "Bank records, communications, financial transfers. And now they have video evidence of us discussing the murders." "Attempted murders," I corrected. "I'm still breathing." Marcus laughed, but it was the sound of a man coming apart at the seams. "You know what the really funny part is? I almost didn't take the Uber. I was going to drive myself to the airport." "Your BMW break down?" I asked innocently. "Yeah, actually. Engine overheated right outside my building. Had to leave it in the parking garage." He shook his head. "If I'd just called a taxi instead." "You'd still be facing federal fraud charges," I pointed out. "You'd still be running. The only difference is you wouldn't have kidnapped an Uber driver on live television." The scarred man, who'd been silent for several minutes, finally spoke up. "We could still fight our way out. Use you as leverage." Victoria shook her head. "Look around, Thomas. We're surrounded by federal agents. We're on live camera. And our hostage is the father of the prosecutor who's been hunting us for months." "If we hurt him, they'll throw us so far under the jail we'll need archaeological equipment to find us." "So what do you suggest?" Marcus asked. "We surrender," Victoria said simply. "We put down our weapons, we walk out with our hands up, and we hope our lawyers can negotiate something less than life sentences." "No," Thomas said firmly. "I'm not spending the rest of my life in federal prison because some old man got lucky." He raised his pistol, pointing it at my head. "Get out of the car! You're coming with me!" But as he reached for the door handle, something unexpected happened. The SUV's engine died. "What the hell?" Thomas muttered, trying to restart it. "Nothing. Not even a click from the starter." "Huh," I said mildly. "That's strange. Must be the storm. All this rain can play havoc with electrical systems." Marcus was staring at me suspiciously. "What did you do?" "Me? I'm just sitting here." I held up my hands innocently. "Though I should mention, modern cars are surprisingly hackable if you know what you're doing. And if you happen to have a daughter who works in federal law enforcement, you tend to pick up a few tricks." Victoria's eyes widened. "You disabled the car?" "I didn't disable anything, but Sarah might have. She's got friends in the cybercrimes division. Very talented people. They can do amazing things remotely if they have the right access codes." As if on cue, all the SUV's doors unlocked simultaneously with a loud click.
"Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, "I believe that's your cue to exit the vehicle." Through the windshield, I could see FBI agents moving closer, their weapons drawn but held low. Sarah's voice came through the loudspeaker again. "Exit the vehicle slowly with your hands visible. Do not make any sudden movements." Victoria was the first to move. She placed her pistol on the seat, opened her door, and stepped out into the rain with her hands raised.
"I surrender," she called out, her voice carrying clearly through the storm. Marcus looked like he was considering making a run for it, but one glance at the FBI agents surrounding us convinced him otherwise. He followed Victoria's lead, placing his weapon down and exiting with his hands up. That left Thomas, who was still holding his gun and looking increasingly desperate. "It's over, Thomas," I said quietly. "You can't shoot your way out of this. There are too many of them, and they have all the evidence they need. Don't make this worse than it already is." He stared at me for a long moment, his scarred face twisted with rage and frustration. Finally, he threw his pistol down and got out of the SUV, cursing under his breath. I remained seated for a moment, watching through the rain as FBI agents moved in to arrest the 3 criminals. My hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was wearing off, and I realized just how close I'd come to not making it through this night. My door opened, and a familiar voice said, "Dad? Are you okay?" I looked up to see Sarah standing there in an FBI windbreaker, her face a mixture of relief and concern. She was soaked through from the rain, but she'd never looked more beautiful to me. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I said, climbing out of the SUV on unsteady legs, "though I think I might be done driving for Uber for a while." She laughed and pulled me into a fierce hug. "When you texted me that license plate, I almost had a heart attack. Do you have any idea how dangerous this was?" "I'm starting to get an idea," I admitted. "But it worked out, didn't it?" "This time," she said sternly. "But Dad, you can't just decide to play amateur detective with federal fugitives. These people were dangerous." "I know, but when I saw who Marcus was, when I realized what he'd done, I couldn't just let him escape, not after the way he treated me at the gas station." Sarah pulled back to look at me. "The gas station?" I told her about the encounter earlier that evening, about Marcus laughing at my car and calling me Gramps, about how small and invisible he'd made me feel. "So, when he ended up in my back seat," I concluded, "it felt like, I don't know, like the universe was giving me a chance to prove that old doesn't mean useless." Sarah's expression softened. "Oh, Dad, you've never been useless. You're one of the smartest, bravest people I know." "Then why did his words hurt so much?" She considered this for a moment.
Because sometimes the hardest part of getting older isn't the physical changes. It's the way society starts to treat you like you don't matter anymore. Like your experience and wisdom and strength are worthless just because you're not 25. An FBI agent approached us, holding a tablet. "Mr. Williams, we need to get your full statement, but I wanted you to know your actions tonight led to the arrest of 3 individuals who've been on our most wanted list for months. Victoria Reeves alone is responsible for stealing over $8 million from pension funds." "Pension funds?" I repeated, feeling a familiar anger stir in my chest. "Retirees, mostly. People who lost their life savings because of her schemes." The agent looked at me with genuine respect. "What you did tonight, you didn't just catch some white-collar criminals. You got justice for a lot of people who thought they'd never see it." As the agent walked away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Not just satisfaction, but a sense of purpose. For 3 years, I'd been driving strangers around the city, invisible and ignored. Tonight, I'd mattered. Tonight, I'd made a difference. "Come on, Sarah," said, taking my arm. "Let's get you out of this rain. We can finish the paperwork at the field office, and then I'm buying you the biggest steak dinner in the city." As we walked toward her car, I couldn't help but smile. Behind us, Marcus Chen was being loaded into a federal transport vehicle, his expensive suit ruined by rain and handcuffs. He looked up as we passed, and for a moment our eyes met. "You know what?" I called out to him. "My car might be old, but it gets the job done, unlike that BMW of yours." He didn't respond, but I saw something in his face that made the whole terrifying evening worthwhile. I saw recognition. Not just of who I was, but of what I'd accomplished.
For the first time since I'd met him, Marcus Chen was looking at me like I mattered. Like I was someone to be respected, not dismissed. The rain was starting to ease as Sarah and I reached her car. In the distance, I could see my faithful Honda Civic, still parked where I'd left it when this adventure began. Tomorrow, I'd probably have to take it to the mechanic to fix whatever new rattles tonight's drama had created. But for now, I was content to ride in the passenger seat of my daughter's government sedan, watching the city lights blur past through rain-streaked windows, knowing that sometimes the old man in the beat-up car isn't just along for the ride. Sometimes he's the one driving the story. 6 months later, I was back behind the wheel of the Honda, though my passenger pickup routine had changed considerably. The Honda itself looked almost the same. A few new dents from that night at the warehouse, a replaced windshield after a piece of debris had cracked it during the storm. But the inside was different. Sarah had insisted on upgrading my dashcam system, and now I had enough recording equipment to document a moon landing. Just in case, she'd said, with a smile that told me she was only half joking. The criminal trial had been a media sensation. The Uber driver who caught America's Most Wanted had been the headline in 3 major newspapers. There had been interviews, a made-for-TV movie deal, which I'd turned down, and more attention than I'd ever wanted in my life. But the best part had been watching Marcus Chen, Victoria Reeves, and Thomas Klein get sentenced. Marcus received 12 years for fraud and kidnapping. Victoria got 15 for the pension fund schemes plus the kidnapping charges. Thomas, who had a longer criminal history, received 25 years. More importantly, the pension funds had been recovered. Hundreds of retirees who'd thought their savings were gone forever got their money back. I'd received thank you letters from people across the country, ordinary folks like me who'd been victimized by white-collar criminals and had given up hope of ever seeing justice. Tonight, though, I was just doing what I'd always done, picking up passengers and trying to make an honest living. My current fare was a young woman heading home from her job at a downtown restaurant. She'd been chatting pleasantly about her day, treating me like a human being instead of a piece of furniture with a steering wheel. "You know," she said as we approached her apartment building, "you look familiar. Haven't I seen you on the news or something?" I smiled in the rearview mirror. "You might have. I had my 15 minutes of fame a while back." "Oh my God, you're the Uber driver, the one who caught those criminals!" She leaned forward excitedly. "That was incredible. How did you know they were dangerous?" "I didn't at first," I admitted. "I just knew something wasn't right. And I've learned that when something doesn't feel right, it's usually worth paying attention to." As I pulled up to her building, she handed me a $20 bill for a $12 ride. "Keep the change," she said, "and thank you. My grandmother was one of the people who got her pension money back because of what you did." After she'd gone inside, I sat in the Honda for a moment, feeling that familiar warm satisfaction. Not because of the praise or the recognition, but because I'd made a difference. Because when it mattered, I'd been strong enough and smart enough and brave enough to do what needed to be done. My phone buzzed with a new ride request. The pickup location was a familiar address, the same high-rise where I'd collected Marcus Chen that stormy night 6 months ago. For a moment, I hesitated. Did I really want to go back to where it all started? Then I smiled and accepted the ride. After all, lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place. Or does it? As I drove through the city streets toward the pickup location, I found myself thinking about that night at the gas station, about Marcus laughing at my old car and making me feel small and worthless. I thought about how easy it would have been to let that humiliation define me, to accept that I was just another invisible old man in a world that had moved past me. Instead, I'd chosen to fight back, not with violence or anger, but with intelligence and determination, and the knowledge that experience counts for something, even in a world obsessed with youth. The Honda pulled up to the familiar building, and I sent the pickup text to my passenger.
Through the rain-spotted windshield, it was drizzling again tonight, just like 6 months ago. I watched the lobby doors. A figure emerged and jogged toward the car through the light rain. Young, professionally dressed, carrying a briefcase. He opened the passenger door and slid in, shaking droplets from his expensive coat. "Good evening," I said pleasantly. "I'm Marcus, your Uber driver. Where are we headed tonight?" The passenger looked up from his phone, and I felt a little chill of recognition. Not because I'd seen him before, but because of the expression on his face. The same entitled arrogance, the same dismissive superiority that I'd seen in Marcus Chen's eyes. "Airport," he said curtly, then went back to his phone without another word. As I pulled away from the curb, I caught his reflection in the rearview mirror. He was typing rapidly, completely ignoring the old man driving him through the city. Just another invisible service worker, not worth his attention or basic courtesy. Some people, I reflected, never learn. But that was okay. I had. "Beautiful night for a drive," I said conversationally as we merged into traffic. "You traveling for business or pleasure?" He didn't even look up. "Business." "What line of work are you in?" "Finance," he replied, his tone suggesting that was all the conversation he intended to have. I smiled and settled in for the drive to the airport, my upgraded dashcam recording everything. On the seat beside me, my phone was ready to text Sarah if anything seemed unusual. In my rearview mirror, I could see my passenger's reflection, still absorbed in his phone, still treating me like I didn't exist. Poor guy had no idea that he'd just made the same mistake Marcus Chen had made 6 months ago. He'd underestimated the old man in the beat-up Honda. The city lights streamed past the windows as we drove through the night, and I found myself humming softly under my breath. After all, you never know what the next ride might bring. And these days, I was ready for anything.